Aquí ha habido dos modelos.
Here, there have been two developmental models, the Christian Protestant model and the Christian Catholic model. The Protestant model gives virtue, that states that those people who would work and really progress would transform as an example of the society. In the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th century, the nobleman did not work. It was despicable to work. He would live off rental payments. There was progress in the Central European countries like in France, even in the United Kingdom. That progress did not happen with us. It is a clear example of what works and what does not work.
Es un claro ejemplo de qué es lo que funciona y lo que no funciona.
The Central European progress, like that of Catholic France or Southern Catholic Germany. This economist, Bernardos, would have you believe that Central European noblemen used to work with a pick and shovel every single day. Noblemen gave into the good life in all places. Well, not marqueses like Francisco Pizarro or Hernan Cortes, who paved their own way to nobility. People of the middle class were dedicated to commerce, and even more so within the Spanish Empire. While the Protestant colonial models from England and the Netherlands saw their colonies as places to extract resources, they had these colonies reductively curtailed. The Spanish virreinatos had their own commerce that was much more advanced, and they used to mint their own coins that the British colonies used because these colonies were prohibited from minting English coins. The Spanish virreinatos used to produce proto-industries and used to commerce for one another. Mexico City and Lima were wealthier than Madrid, even though they were vicereine capitals, and these cities became poor after falling under Anglo-Saxon control from the Great Britain and the United States. It is assumed that Spanish explorers were just wanderers. However, Spanish navigators possessed some of the most advanced navigational methods in the world, so much so that they traveled across the entire Atlantic and Pacific Oceans in search of suitable currents and to establish the most important global routes between Europe and China. Spain established the first globalization. Nothing like that had been done before. Important to note that the areas within Germany and the Netherlands that were the first to reach the Industrial Revolution were Catholic ones, and then later the Protestant ones. Bavaria, Germany, the most Catholic area, is the most potent economic motor of the country. You say that we misunderstood God in Trent, and that instead of choosing God as Lutheran or Protestant, we chose God with Trent during the Counter-Reformation. By doing this, we chose a path that took us out of the global dominating race. I'm convinced of it. Yes, without a doubt. We should have chosen the Lutheran religion. Martin Luther, who stated, "Reason is the devil's whore," and that reason should be stomped out. Let's see what happened in those countries where the religious revolution didn't penetrate. It was asphyxiated quickly and not able to reach any development. History tells us that the human spirit was not liberated. Two big countries, Spain and Italy, can testify. While in other parts of Europe, where the Reformation played an important role, the human spirit reached, in the last 3 centuries, an activity and freedom hitherto unknown. At the same time where it did not penetrate, it fell into softness and inertia. Huge mistake on our part. What a shame that Spain and Italy were not evolved enough, given that they would not murder as many witches as Germany. Catholicism prohibited the liberty to burn witches. This must have totally set us back to the Dark Ages. What kind of freedom is that? The great liberty in the Protestant world to prosecute anyone indiscriminately and broadcast hate from the 4 corners of the world? Without a doubt, Spain and Italy missed out on those liberties, especially when we notice that Spain and Italy renounced feudalism more than a whole century before Germany. What a Catholic burden. Italy paved way with the first bank, also the scientific revolution, the Renaissance, and Spain, the greatest navigational expertise in the world, the first to travel around the world, proving empirically its roundness, and figured out the world's diameter, the first universities in the Americas, the first laws protecting indigenous people, etc., etc., etc. What achievements did Protestant Germany have before it overcame third world poverty in the second half of the 19th century? Overcome thanks to the impulse of Catholic Germany. The first person we should mention when discussing Protestantism is without a doubt Martin Luther. Even though he was no one special, there were many others alike who proclaimed a similar thesis before him. He was triumphant where others failed because he committed himself to the established power, the German princes, and thanks to this he prospered. Luther quickly showed great talent for hateful propaganda. And if there was anything that this man had, it was pure distilled hate, especially for Spain. It is more tolerable to live under Turkish power than Spanish, given that the Turks sustain a kingdom with justice. Meanwhile, the Spanish evidently are beasts. In that time, German peasants lived in poverty and led several sturdy revolts. Luther supported the German prince's repression against the peasants. By doing this, he transformed himself into a propagandistic arm on behalf of the repression of the German princes. Against the killer hordes and thieves, I wet my pen in their blood. Their members should be strangled, stabbed, in secret or publicly, by whoever can do it, like you would kill rabid dogs. And of course, Martin Luther was one of the biggest promoters of burning witches in Europe, if not the biggest. It is a very just law that witches be put to death, because they produce much harm. This has been ignored until this moment. They rob milk, butter, and everything from a home. They enchant children. They also generate mysterious illnesses in the knee that the body consumes itself. They produce injuries to the body and soul. They give potions and enchantments in order to generate hate, love, torments, and destruction in the home. In the field that no one can cure, these sorcerers must be executed because they are thieves, marriage divorcers, bandits, murderers. They injure in a lot of ways. That's why they must be executed. Not just because of these damages, but also because they work with Satan. It is not strange that Germany turned into the main witch crematory in all of Europe. Germany almost surpassed all of Europe put together in executing witches. That's how the northern countries became. Here we were still stuck on the god of the Dark Ages, who was reactionary to our neighbor, who was not a good Christian. Then we denounce him with the Inquisition. But the Lutheran schism is not only reduced to hate for hate. The German princes that converted to Lutheranism also saw huge financial business in this conversion. Conversion to Lutheranism would give them full political religious power at the time, because they themselves would take the role of the Pope within their own regions. The power that Lutheranism gave these princes was the total authority to oblige their subjects to convert to the prince's religion. In the zones where these princes converted, not only was Catholicism prohibited, but other branches of Protestantism that was not Lutheranism was prohibited as well. But of course, financial interests were not to be skipped over. The Protestant schism was extremely lucrative for these princes. It gave them authority to confiscate all Catholic Church's belongings in order to settle their economic problems. Luther, of course, was paid well for his services. The ancient Augustinian convent in which he used to belong was transformed into his personal house after he confiscated it from the church. In the case of the Netherlands, Calvinism also served the political and divisive interests of Willem van Orange. Orange did not want to join Lutheranism because this Protestant variant was linked to the audience of the natural lord. The natural lord of Orange was Philip II, the person who Orange was fighting against, which means that Protestantism spread throughout the Netherlands exists thanks to the political interests of this man. Way before Germany was divided by communism and capitalism, it was divided by Lutheranism and Catholicism. However, this was no Cold War, but in fact a flaming hot war. The 30 Years' War destroyed Germany irreparably for more than a century, and brutally reduced the population. Northern Germany, the Lutheran part, condemned itself to be one of the most delayed Western European zones to leave feudalism, with centuries of lag time in contrast to its Catholic counterparts, and of course Spain. Feudalism was the economic system by which the northern German princes nourished themselves. This is why it lasted so long out there. We made a mistake in Trent because now there arises a God that now mandates that you negotiate, that you work, that you be an honorary citizen, that you create the world looking forward into the future. Martin Luther became an inspiration for the Nazis due to his nationalism and anti-Semitism, so much so that they utilized his image as propaganda. The Jewish people are our main enemies. They do not stop blaspheming about our Lord Christ, talking about the Virgin Mary as a whore, and Christ a bastard, and about us as imbeciles and aberrations. If they could finish us off, they would willingly. They already do it often, especially those who act like doctors, even though sometimes they help because the devil helps finish the final task. They often give out medicine like in French Switzerland. They administer venom to people that die in an hour, a month, a year, 10 years, or 20 years. They are very experienced in this art. However, if they convert, abandon their usury, and receive Christ, then we will consider them as brothers in good faith. On the contrary, nothing will be obtained, since they have gone too far. Take note how Luther states abandon their usury. I say that for those who think Christian Protestantism promotes business. One of the differences between the Catholic and Lutheran Church is while the Catholic Church has renounced the Holy Inquisition and has left it behind, the Lutheran Church still exalts Martin Luther. Can you imagine in Spain having a parish named after the Holy Inquisition or Torquemada? Well, that's what's happening in the Christian Protestant world with Luther, Calvin, and so many Protestant arsonists. No one should think that Luther was the only one. Calvin was also a hardened reformer. One of his victims was the celebrity medic Miguel Servet, who Calvin sent to the fire pit for disagreeing with him on the Holy Trinity. Casiodoro de la Reina, a Protestant Spaniard, fled Spain because of the Inquisition. He moved to a Protestant territory where he could integrate himself. However, upon arriving to Ginebra, and after witnessing what was happening there, he left horrified, claiming that Ginebra had turned into the new Rome. And no, it was not the new Rome, it was much worse, given that the number of executions in the Protestant territories exceedingly surpassed those in the Catholic ones. Nevertheless, he ended up as a Calvinist pastor in England, in which a lot of religious persecutions were carried out as well. The Puritan Protestants that arrived in the territories of the 13 colonies were fleeing the English persecutions. Casiodoro de la Reina is attributed to have been the first to translate the Bible into Spanish, which is false. The Christian Protestants were never the first to translate the Bible, not by a long shot. There already existed translations from the Middle Ages. The idea that Protestants were the first to translate the Bible is pure mythology, just like the idea that Martin Luther nailed his thesis on a church door. There's no proof it played out like that. Protestantism pioneered and personalized translations of the Bible. In Martin Luther's Germany, only one type of translation was permitted, his own. In England, the King James Version arose as another personalized translation that the United States colonists used as well. Here the priest would go around, the bishop, "No, I will read the Bible for you. No, I will interpret it for you," like a sorcerer. This left us uncritical, cowards, incriminators, illiterate, despicable, and jealous for many things. Now it is seen how our people are greedier, crueler, more immodest, more shameless, and worse than they were under the Pope's authority. Who could have predicted it? If we had known beforehand that so many evils, seditions, scandals, blasphemies, ingratitudes, and perversions would result from this, well, now that we're in it, we have to have good spirits against this bad fortune. Christian Protestants in America were the only ones of all of the Americas that persecuted and executed witches, like the Salem witches. But in Spain, the Inquisition is recognized as grotesque, while the Salem witch movie is a Halloween tale. Not really, but Protestant propaganda was the best of the best. Protestantism in Hispanoamerica was introduced by American money, as was the case for the School of Summer in Mexico, one of the centers for spreading Protestantism. Until this day, it continues to be an exterior political tool of the United States. The United States has on many occasions sought to erase any Hispanic aspect from Hispanoamerica. It has sought to erase Catholicism from Hispanoamerica with Protestantism, or indigenous extremism in order to demonize the general history of the Virreinatos. Again, Christian Protestantism is being utilized as a political tool, just like Lutheranism for the German princes, like Calvinism for Willem van Orange, or Anglicanism for Henry VIII, a denomination that was founded by a king that had his wives executed. Given that Protestantism is a type of Christianity where anyone can create their own church willy-nilly, many of these Christian churches are susceptible to swindlers. And we are not talking about misconduct within a Catholic or Protestant church. We're talking about churches built from the ground up to manipulate and steal large sums of money. A more common threat for Protestant Christians, given that Protestantism inherently seeks to diminish any authority outside of Scripture, a centralized authority that can communicate and resist against defrauding. Nevertheless, these kinds of practices do not affect the image of Protestant Christianity, because media outlets are more focused on scandals carried out by Catholics, more so than Protestant Christians and secular institutions. A good example are the abuse cases that occur within the Catholic and Protestant churches. Catholic scandals are given more media light than Protestant scandals. Abuse victims are used to diminish Catholicism. Meanwhile, abuse victims within the Protestant realm are treated as second class. Either way, Christian Protestantism has imposed itself within Hispanic society, whether it be from the increase in converts or Catholics giving into Protestant propaganda. So much so that even Pope Francis has given homage to Martin Luther. This Catholic inferiority complex has that kind of influence. I do not understand why the Church has to excuse itself for abuses committed in Hispanic America during the Spanish Empire. Meanwhile, there does not seem to have to be any pardon or even recognition for the large quantity of people murdered because of Lutheranism. Now we can clearly see how much propaganda can mold a person's mind.